right. Well, welcome to the Agile for Humanity Tucson meetup. This is Dr. Dave, your host, and we're here in Tucson, Arizona, hanging out, and we have American here hanging out with us, and Allison and Noreen. So let me just tell you a little bit about what we do with Agile for Humanity, and I'm like so glad that we're back because we're out for a few months doing 5 Saturdays. We're spending all of our time teaching high school students how to build software, how to be agilist, teaching them how to be entrepreneurs and get ready for a job market. So that has been like amazingly fun. And so just sharing what else is going on here in our wonderful world. I just want to let everyone know that this is a recorded webinar series. We take this and we share it back with the Agile Alliance. So we have a little bit of a global perspective. Hopefully people are watching it, and we publish it over on the Now Share with Dr. Dave podcast. And that gets picked up on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and also on grokshare.com. And I also share it out in social media. So people get to see our presence. And Allison, we're connected in LinkedIn. So you get to see all of the stuff that I post and also on Twitter, which is a good thing. The next thing is, we have a few upcoming events. We like to share what's going on in the Agile community. And I know one that's coming up is the Agile Open SoCal in Irvine. Allison, we've hung out there before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have the Agile Open California up in Berkeley. That's coming in October. And then this webinar will be part of the 10 West Festival, which is kind of like a Southwest by Southwest here in Tucson. And so that's happening, and we'll have my friend Alicia McLean speaking there. And she actually is going to be in the flesh. So that's kind of cool. So come to Tucson if you want to just check out the 10 West Festival. There's actually a women hackathon on that day, which will be, I think, amazingly fun and amazing to happen. So come and check that out. Just talking a little bit about our great sponsors, Agile Alliance, Scrum Alliance. They've been really good to the Agile community, and also KnowledgeShare, which is my consultancy. And we sponsor this event, make sure that we have space, we have webinar capabilities to be able to do this and try to build this community. So what's coming up, right? So we have coming up next month, we're trying to build a CIO, CTO forum, talking about the role of agility in digital transformation strategy. So Allison, I know I pinged you.
You did.
Yeah. Noreen, if your CIO or CTO want to step in, that's awesome, right? And we'll have that coming next month. And then yes, Alicia's going to be out here on October 19th talking about the secret sauce of building a culture of accountability through coaching. Look forward to hearing what she has to say, right? And bring that to our community as well. Look who's here today. Noreen and Allison. They're going to be, presenting aspirations of agility and truth. We're really looking forward to that presentation. And let's see. And that's it. That's it. We're ready to rock and roll. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give control, let's see, back to to Allison and Noreen. So whenever you guys are ready to share, you guys could just share, or I could just.
All right, I will take over here.
Yep. There you go.
Now you can see our fancy slides.
You got you.
All right, so like Dave said, this is Aspirations of Agility and Truths of Transformation. So based on our experiences helping organizations embrace Agile, as well as the dreams and the hopes that they had going into it. So I'm curious, Dave and American, I'm sure I just butchered that, but in your experience, why were companies adopting Agile? What is it that they're interested in when they talk about this?
American, you want to share?
I am new to this.
So American, she's very new to Agile. So okay. I can tell you, from my experience, most people are looking for that silver bullet, right? They have some pain points and they go, oh, we can't get things done faster. Our people aren't working well together. Help us. Our leadership is disengaged. So all of those things, our customers hate us. So,
Spot on. So it is like that silver bullet that they're looking for, because we want to lower defects, we want to increase the transparency, or we need more predictability, more collaboration. There's so many benefits to Agile that we could talk about, that it sounds like a cure-all, and that's what gets people hooked initially. And so a little bit about myself. I'm Allison Pollard. I'm an Agile coach and consultant here in Dallas. I work for Improving. And my strengths, I'm high input, so I read everything I can get my hands on. I go to numerous conferences, and that's how Dave and I have met. I'm constantly learning and absorbing more information, especially in the Agile space. I'm also very big into thinking, which is really like the next couple of strengths there on the list. So intellection, deliberative, and restorative, recognizing problems, how might we fix them, thinking through the potential risks, and really loving some of those intellectual debates that can happen. And then the last one there, futuristic. I love to imagine what could be, and especially how we might be able to get there. So I sometimes refer to myself as like the brain. I can be your cliff notes to agility if I'm helping you, but we can also imagine together and come up with that plan of how we make it a reality.
So hi, I'm Noreen Emanuel. I'm an Agile coach at American Airlines, and Allison's my super coach.
Yeah.
Some of my strengths are that empathy. I connect with people. I can put myself in someone else's shoes and relate to what they're going through. And that also, most of my strengths, you can see they're more about people. A relator. I can relate to people. I have input as well, so I do like to read and like gather knowledge. So that's one of the things that Alice and I connected on.
Yeah.
So she could give me like reading material, and I could go read it, and we could talk about it. Positivity, I like to look for the bright spots, like to see the bright spots in people, what their potential is, help them out. And adaptability, I've experienced a lot of changes in the last couple of years, and I was able to adapt and roll with the punches.
Yeah, so when we started working together, I recognized that I had mentioned a couple models or mentioned a few names, and she would come in the next day and say, I read up on that thing that you mentioned. I went, oh my God, people never go and read up on the stuff I mentioned. This is awesome. And that's why, had Noreen go through the Strengths Finders test and be able to, tell me what were the other things that made her so unique. And so we're clearly like the yin and the yang. Her people skills are, so complementary to my not people skills, that we've been able to really help a great change happen at her company.
Hey, I want to be a yin and a yang somewhere.
Right? Right? Yeah, it's amazing, like when you recognize like what sets us apart and how can we actually complement one another. I've been asked before, like, if I'm here to coach Noreen, like, do I feel like I need to make her a clone of me? And I'm like, no, please don't. The things that I do that set me apart, other people are not gonna be able to step in and do that. I've got 10 years of experience that have made me as knowledgeable and as experienced as I am. I need to help someone find their own path and really do it in their own way. And that's been exciting for, I think, both of us.
Yes.
Yeah. So the agenda for today's talk is really like, what does it mean to be getting started adopting Agile in a company? How do we engage people to participate in that? When you're midway through, how do you check progress? And certainly, how do we get that continuous improvement going? Because that's really the heart of Agile. It's that long-term journey that we're never really done. We're always looking to what can be made better, how can we change and continue to serve our companies and serve our customers better. And then we'll wrap up by sharing a model of a learning path for a team. And I found it really helpful to use in understanding, like, what are some of the initial benefits that I might see from a team, and what kinds of investments or changes might be needed later to see even more agility from them.
Are you trying to make us laugh?
I just went to put the power source over my other device, so I had to go do a little dance again.
That's the power source dance.
Oh, okay. You recognized it?
clearly power.
Okay.
All right. So getting started with Agile, we already talked about the benefits that executives are hearing about, or managers, or even team members that get them attracted to this thing that we call Agile. And as they learn more about it, they probably are interested in the Agile Manifesto, written in 2001, that really kicked off this movement. And that manifesto is really a set of values and principles. And so we look to it for guidance. It does not give us a clear picture of how we do Agile, or like what Agile would look like on a day-to-day basis necessarily. And so in that case, we often look to frameworks for a bit more structure, a bit more guidance on how to get started with it. And so most popular, most common framework is Scrum. And so we have it depicted here. It fits quite nicely on a slide. And I believe that's how your organization got started originally.
Yeah, when we first started getting into Agile, which was like maybe 10 years ago, we started with Scrum. There was this big talk that we wanted to move in the direction of Agile. And so we had a group of a department at our company that did Scrum. So they taught us how to do ceremonies, like all the Scrum ceremonies. And then they also embedded a coach on our teams to help us like get started and get that regular cadence of doing the ceremonies. And it worked well for that time.
Yeah, so helping people understand the components of it and like really build up that muscle memory around it. In other organizations I've worked, sometimes they're looking to get started more with like extreme programming. So I had one client where the direction from the CIO was, we're going to do 2-week iterations and we're going to be doing test-driven development. And so with that guidance, we kind of recognized some of the pieces of extreme programming and realized that other parts of that framework could also be beneficial. And so we kept that in mind as coaches. I've noticed in some cases, I come into, maybe I'm working with infrastructure or I'm working with support teams, where they are on their journey, it looks like Kanban could be a better fit. And so we look to a continuous pull or a continuous flow model and how they visualize their work. I don't know how it is where you are, but in Dallas, like scaling is a big thing. And so there are some companies looking to large scale Scrum. We have a number of companies also looking at SAFe. And so the theme across all of this is, right away we recognized that we needed more guidance than what the manifesto gave us. Someone did, some research or had some conversations and chose a framework for us to adopt. And then it seems like the common pattern is we emphasize the framework and we kind of lose sight of why we're doing this in the first place.
All right. In my experience, what I noticed is that the Scrum Masters or the team realized they needed to do like stand-ups, or they needed to do like retros. It became like just something that we needed to check off, that we did our stand-up and our retro, but we weren't using those ceremonies effectively to improve the team.
Yeah. So the key thing here is we need to keep in mind like why we wanted agility. Let's keep those benefits in mind and make sure that we're communicating them constantly throughout the initial adoption so people understand what it is that we're trying to do. And not so much about, hey, you're going to be a Scrum Master now, or we're going to be delivering in sprints. It's we're trying to increase the productivity and the innovation in our organization. Or we really want to improve customer satisfaction because it's been rather low and we know that there are a number of defects that we need to resolve. When we can connect to like those higher goals and really captivate people, get them motivated, it'll give a lot more momentum into that adoption.
Yeah, I think it's really important to let the team know why we do certain things, because then they'll buy into it more if they know why they're doing, rather than we just need to talk every morning for 15 minutes. Yeah.
All right. So we get them on board with like that goal, and then we have to invite them to participate. In a lot of cases, there's this sense that we're going to train people and then we're going to like govern and make sure that they comply. And I have not found that to be all that effective long term. I had read this article a while back from Margaret Wheatley, who's done a lot in organizational change. And she talked about participation is not a choice. And that is not meant to be like, this is mandatory, thou shalt follow the change. What she's really saying here is that when we give direction, people will interpret it how they will and do what they think is best. So they may or may not follow the instructions that you give them. It is far better to invite them to participate so that they can contribute and really have ownership and feel included in the change. And so that's one of the great things about Noreen's strengths, where she is so, relator and so empathetic. She naturally does this. There were times where I think you and I would like talk after like the team's daily stand-up, and I would notice a few things, and then she would immediately go and have the conversation with them. And it kind of freaked me out because, again, I'm like slower and I like to think things through a bit more. But she could get them on board and like open to exploring different ways of communicating or visualizing the information or making things happen.
Yeah, I think it's just because I like to communicate with people, and I know, and I think they feel like, because I can relate to them, it's not a dictating thing. I'm trying to find something that they're using their skills, their talents, trying to make it better for them as well. So I know everyone doesn't have that skill. I recognize that about myself.
Thank goodness. All right. So when we kind of asked ourselves this question of like, what are ways to invite participation during an agile transformation? What's been really cool is, Noreen's been with her company a long time. She's seen the initial Agile adoption. She's also been there to where they went to what I call like Agile 2.0. Like, how do we go to the next level and really get more agility, which is where, we started working together. And so what are things that you two can come up with, Dave and Amike, that we might involve people?
I think you said it wrong.
I think I did too. And I was like beating myself up in my head about it.
Etel, so you could call her Etel, E-T-E-L.
Etel.
Intel Etel. So what do you think? If you wanted to connect with some people and said, hey, I have this new Agile thing. We want to teach you more about it. How would you invite them? Any thoughts? I could go first, but I just wanted to give you a chance.
Okay, so actually I work in the lab.
Okay.
And I recently got trained on Scrum.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to, so I was advised to attend the meetups to be able to meet other Scrum Masters and then see how they work.
Yeah. So you're in the right place, you're in the right place because you have coaches here who could, probably share some knowledge, our experience, right?
Right. Yeah. I have found it like actually really helpful bringing people from my clients to meetups with me.
Yeah.
They get to learn alongside me, hear some really great ideas, and then we can have conversations around like how might we apply that in their organizations.
Or should I volunteer people
to speak at a group with me? Then they
volunteer. One way that I found is I believe lunch and learns are fun ways to invite people into learning about Agile. Mm-hmm. So you can have like, hey, everyone bring lunch today, or maybe we all pitch in and we buy some pizza and we're going to meet and we're going to talk about Agile, and maybe you think of a topic that you want to cover, why am I afraid of Agile? Maybe a good topic, right? Maybe a fun topics that you could bring in, and then so you could start a conversation that way as part of it, as one idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think that you may want to try, if there's something that you have in mind? Yeah, it's okay too.
All right, we'll give you more ideas. We'll share some things that we've tried. So which one do you want to highlight?
So like we do the lunch and learns, we do like we have guilds at our company. So a good thing is like some people don't have time. So if you offer like a forum during lunchtime and provide food, they can come and learn, and they don't have to worry about their lunch. So that's a good thing that's worked for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we've done some like product charter workshops. So getting the team together at the beginning of like a new project or like when they're ready to kick off and, facilitate that conversation on what is success going to look like. What is it going to look like for the product? What is it going to look like for us as a team? And maybe we come up with the working agreements. So the team, is having that conversation of like, how are we going to make decisions together? And like, how might we handle it when there's conflict? And they can own that. They have this responsibility to one another that they've jointly defined.
Yeah, I like working agreements a lot because, and so we don't like blame people when things don't go right, because you can point back to the working agreements that they all collectively came up with to say, hey, we all decided this, do we need to change this? Does it still apply? You can have those conversations around that, and it's a safe conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we've also done some like organizational retrospectives about the transformation. And remember, we had gotten the like leadership team together at one point. We were a couple months along, and getting different perspectives on like how was this change going across the organization, and like what were the things that we might want to do differently from that.
I also like when Allison facilitated a self-design team event. That was really good too as well. That was something new for us that we had not done before, and I think people were generally excited about that.
Yeah, that's probably one of the like more radical things that you can do. But when you're in an organization that has multiple teams and you're in those conversations of like, how do we structure them? Like, who do we move from this team to that team? Or like, we need to start up a brand new one. You end up sitting in meetings with managers and spreadsheets, and it's very dry and it's very difficult. That I proposed this idea, and I actually thought like, I'll just mention it and maybe we'll do it like 6 months from now. And instead it was like, oh, Allison like mentioned this idea, like let's try this in a couple weeks. But get all the team members in the room, have the product owners explain what their products are, and then let the team members choose what teams, like what products they want to be a part of. It's an iterative process, as you can imagine. You are going to have some constraints where, I can't have a team of like 20 people all working on this like one product. We need to have balance across all of the products. And so letting people like sort themselves gives them, again, like that sense of ownership and that sense of responsibility. But it gave them like, some folks like really got excited about like moving to perhaps like different technologies or like trying on some different roles, which was really kind of cool.
Or there was conversation about, I've never worked with this person before. I'd like to learn from this person. So I want to go work on their team.
Yeah.
Hey, so just a quick question, because there's a couple authors who are like really who has pushed this model and who are currently pushing this model. So why don't you share some of the authors who are doing some of that stuff? I know I'm not, but I'd rather you do it.
Right now, well, because I know it's Sandy Mamoli and David. I totally forget his last name.
Yeah.
They did an experience report at the Agile conference a couple of years ago, and that's where I first learned about how to facilitate the self-designing like team or self-designing squad event. Yeah. And they have a nice book. It's rather short, but it's like a facilitator's guide. So Noreen and I both have copies of that and use that to prepare. There's also a really cool idea, and that, again, it was an experience report that's now been fleshed out into a book by Heidi Helfand on dynamic reteaming. And I love it because that really takes us not only on like self-designing teams as like a one-time event, but when you're growing your organization, as you might be expanding the number of teams that you have. Like, how do you set the seeds where it's okay that we not keep teams sacred and keep them together long-term, but instead let the team members kind of choose the pace as much as possible? How frequently are we changing, and like what might be the ways that they want to change the team formations? So that one I think is absolutely fascinating. I love Heidi and hearing her speak and talking on that subject about how she used a lot of coaching and a lot of facilitation techniques to really empower people at her company.
Yeah, I mean, Heidi's a friend, and so I just wanted to make sure we highlight,
So, but you didn't know her name?
Oh, yes, I knew, but I was trying to pulling it out of Allison just for fun, and I didn't want to like grab the thunder because we have Sandy.
We mentioned we were input, so for me, input means I read. Does not mean I remember the people's names.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ask a question.
Author's name.
Adele has a question.
Yeah.
With respect to self-designing team events, does switching people around not affect the velocity of the sprint?
It does. It does. And I love that you're like recognizing that, because if we do change up the teams and who's on them, it will have an impact on, like their velocities or like their team dynamics initially. They're going to have to get to know one another. They would probably be estimating a backlog again and like determining, like how they work together and might they need to make some changes to the way things are formatted or the way that they run the events. So there is a time period where things are in flux.
But I think we made sure that we did keep at least an anchor on the team, that someone who had some of the knowledge, so that we didn't completely come up with a whole brand new team.
Yeah.
So there was that there too.
Yeah. So there was still some like domain and like technical expertise that remained on the product. Yeah.
Yeah, but one of the things we don't want to get hung up on is velocity always, right? Because sometimes, if our pivot and our view is only about velocity, right? I mean, we lose the aspect of the growth of the organization, because, not only do we want to produce outcomes, but we really want to make sure that we have a learning community, right? And we encourage that, in the organization. So I just want to kind of throw that in there.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about not being specialist, but being T-shaped and learning a little bit about everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
that does highlight, like, if you're going to have that event, like, make sure your stakeholders are on board. Because like we certainly had like the IT management support. The business like found out about it, secondary. And I know they had some of those concerns about like, what is this going to mean for like my timelines and, the stakeholders that I've been communicating with, and, how do we message this? And so, recognizing that there could be timing concerns around when do we change up the teams, that you might need to, be thoughtful about that.
But I think a good counterpoint is that when people get complacent and bored, they're not really producing as best as they can either. I mean, so it's probably good.
When you're like, I have to work on this product,
Yeah.
it's not so cool. I wish I was on that other one.
Yeah.
All right. So now you're into the adoption. People have, some more say in it. They have more ownership of it. Now we're looking to how do we continuously improve? So for me, I'm always thinking about like, what's the current state? Like, how do we recognize where we are right now? And so many organizations, have these traditional status reports and status meetings and, red, yellow, greens, all over the place. And how do we now, come to say like a sprint review or some kind of a demo and have people looking at the product itself? What is the software? What is this like new implementation looking like? How might we introduce that to our customers? What kind of value is it potentially going to provide? And let's look at some of the metrics from the team in terms of, we've been seeing more on like how quickly are we deploying? What's our change failure rate looking like? For our particular like retail product, let's say, like how many have been sold in say like the last 2 weeks? Like how many customers were offered that, but they, for whatever reason, like did not choose to purchase it. So we're having more interesting conversations around like the product results and like how it's being used by customers.
And I think we're also making a point to do a lot of A/B testing as well. Like if we were to implement this icon versus this, what's the adoption rate? That stuff is interesting as well.
Yeah. And then, how to like sit by the team, like how do we have like a manager nearby? How do we have some of their other stakeholders nearby? And maybe we're even doing workshops around like value stream mapping. So that team recognizes like what is their current process, or like who are the other groups involved, like from ideation, through to like production, and the steps along the way, where might we remove some waste and get better holistically.
Yeah, that's a big thing right now. We're trying to recruit facilitators for value stream mapping so we can start making that a regular part of our process, recognize our waste and stuff. So.
Yep.
Nice.
And then, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Cool. So you know, I kind of favor like looking at things as they are. And this is where Noreen shines, is really like amplifying what's working.
Yeah. You know, seeing where people are passionate, like putting them in an area where they are passionate, and you know, a lot of times we try to, you know, our managers might try to see like, oh, is this person, you know, are they the best coder? But I try to see like, are they a good team player and they have the potential to be the best coder? Like some people might have like totally written off a person, but I'm able to see something that they're able to be in the future.
Yeah. And Noreen, you know, really like shows the appreciation, is able to like name those positive behaviors, so like really reinforcing that person's confidence. So even if they recognize like, no, I'm not the best coder today, I am bringing like the right attitude, I am like engaging in conversations, that I feel more confident, you know, now working with my other team members and like learning more about, you know, coding practices or some of the technical areas that I could learn more about and grow in that way.
I mean, you see the people who really own their work, and you know, you want to nurture them and help them grow.
Yeah. Also, you know, those like retrospective type conversations of like, how do we realize like, where did people feel like they really contributed or like they were really like the most excited about their work? And how do we then like as coaches find ways of like creating more of those opportunities for them, so that they are like motivated, they are passionate around, you know, their day to day and feel like they have a bigger contribution besides, you know, checking in code because, you know, someone told me I needed to write some code.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
People really like nothing but cake and
right. Yes, we've had a lot of desserts. That's the go-to at our office.
You know, you would for me, it's natural. Like if I'm driving by somewhere, like if I'm driving by Krispy Kremes or nothing but to go just stop in and pick it up. But it's surprising, but it's not natural to everybody. But I've actually been able to rub off like on managers who like, I'm gonna pull a Noreen. I'm like, what does Jason say? He's like,
he's channeling
like,
you.
Yeah, he's channeling his inner Noreen, and he went and bought nothing but cakes.
Nothing but cakes, huh?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's also interesting. So we sit on like an open floor, you know, with all these different development teams. And there was one day, like one of the teams was like super excited. They had deployed to production. They're seeing some results on their dashboard. Like they started clapping. And there's been this like ripple effect. Like if you hear a team start like applause in like one pocket of the floor, like other people start also clapping, even though they have no idea what it's about. And so it's like this like spontaneous like appreciation that happens, but it really does like boost the energy for like a couple minutes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome to change the dynamics of the room where, you know, simple applause would ripple through the organization and people are like cheering them on. That's beautiful.
It's like, and inevitably you're like wanting to like go by later on, like, hey, like what was that about? Like, and sometimes it's like, you know, a person just got promoted or they, you know, became an employee, might have been someone's anniversary. They've been there, you know, 10 plus years or, you know, maybe they hit like a milestone with their product and it was really amazing the things that they delivered for their customers.
A little appreciation goes a long way.
Sure does.
Yeah.
So if you need tips on how to motivate people, just contact me.
Right. Yeah. All of your desserts, gift needs. Yeah. Even this week you came by with flowers, like fresh flowers for one of our coaches. So that's been like cheering up our like whole oddball space. We have like these like tables that are totally mismatched because we gave the nicer ones to the teams.
True servant leadership.
True servant leadership. We sit wherever we can. So, you know, as we're working with teams and thinking about like the learning path, you know, of Agile, you know, like what are the different things that they need to be thinking about? What is it that they're starting to do differently? You know, how do we start to see those benefits that we wanted initially over time? You know, if you imagine in the beginning, you have, you know, just individual developers, you know, and testers, and they're working in a more traditional model. First thing that we need to do is put them on the same team together. and they learn how to function as a team. And this is really cool because now we can focus on value. They're probably working from a backlog and giving some kind of regular demonstrations, say through like a iteration or sprint review or just like regular playbacks. But we can now see some progress from a business perspective on like what are they delivering. We can redirect them as needed by changing the things in their backlog or changing the order of the backlog items and really ensuring that they're working on the most valuable thing. And so when we have those capabilities in place, we get a lot more transparency and we get a lot more collaboration than we had. And so you could stop right there. I found that more often than not, we need to go a bit further. That product probably needs to be sustainable over time. So we need a greater investment in the skills. And so like what I was saying earlier, you started with Scrum and then now you're looking at like Agile 2.0.
One of the biggest questions we ask when we're coming up with our MVP or our roadmap is like, is this delivering value? Is this solving a customer's problem? That's an important question because that helps you like throw things away. Like, why is it on our roadmap even? It's not even adding customer value.
Yep. Yeah. And because now like we're investing more in the team skills. And so, we're talking DevOps, we're talking some of those extreme programming practices, really trying to, bolster that technical side so that the teams can release at will. So as they are, coming up with some cool things for customers, like how do we get it in their hands like immediately so we can capture that value frequently and, reveal the obstructions like as early as possible. So there's been a lot more emphasis on automated tests to help us with that. It's enabling us to have, lower defects and more predictability, which, has been so helpful for the organization. And then of course, like have higher productivity. So people are not having to wait as long. Now, of course, the challenge with this is it's so hard to learn those skills initially that you will slow down in order to speed up.
Right. Yeah, so some of the problems I'm experiencing is that people are not familiar with creating automated tests and stuff. So we're having to bake that in, and remember that we need to bake it in when we're sizing our stories that it needs to include automated tests. We take the, it takes at the beginning a long time, like Allison mentioned, but later on we'll speed up. We just got to pay the price up front.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the concept is, in the Agile space as it goes, you have to go slow to go fast, but actually it's a lean thing. You have to go slow to go fast. So we have to recognize that it's okay for us to go a little slower than going off in the longer run because the learning is important.
Right. Yeah. So, and this is where like Noreen and I have been talking, like we have some teams that they're going to probably stop right here. They can deliver value. They could deploy, daily is the goal, multiple times a day. And this would be sufficient, for the products that they work on. And in other areas, there's more need. We're wanting to see again, like more innovation and really be able to like keep up or even like surpass competitors. And so there's some organizational changes going on where like the org structure, people are moving around, different departments are changing drastically. What we're trying to do is bring a lot more product or like a lot more of that business expertise within the team itself. And so now the developers and testers and whoever else is contributing is they're able to make better product decisions. And so I know in one case, team members looked at their dashboard on how the product was performing. They had some conversations, came up with a brand new idea. They were able to implement it within like an hour or two and have it in production in front of some customers that very same day. And so being able to have the right people in the room and, have those conversations right away to do that is really powerful. Because they eliminated handoffs, they eliminated wait time. They didn't have to like wait for a meeting or go find people, but they were able to have this like new innovative approach and be a little bit more disruptive with their product than what the original roadmap would have said.
I think this is a great approach because you can find out sooner rather than later if the customer even wants this product or that that we need to even continue developing it rather than waiting 6 months to a year and putting something out and realize the customers don't want it.
Yeah, and so what I love about this is recognizing like what were the particular benefits that, you know, an organization or like some managers were interested in, and what are the areas that we might need to focus on coaching in particular. And then also recognizing, like I said, with optimized value, this is probably like that silver bullet, you know, set of benefits that people were sold on. Recognizing that there is that like organizational structure that needs to change, we would need our sponsors on board and willing to like go and have those conversations to make this happen. There might be some political capital involved, you know, having to work with other, you know, executives, other managers in order to make that happen. So that can be very time consuming and certainly like a lengthier change than just forming a development team in the first place.
I think it involves some risks. People need to like be ready to take some risks.
Yeah. After that, there is this other idea where if you could change the entire organizational culture, you can now like optimize for systems. So like we have like cross-pollinated perspectives, and we're now like stimulating market innovations. So anyone in the company understands like how value is created and like what value is clearly enough that they can move themselves to like the most needed place to contribute. That sounds really, really hard, and it is. We've only seen this in a couple like smaller organizations, and this was more native, like more in their DNA from like how they started. This is not something that has been, you know, I think visible yet in any kind of like large organization. So in some ways, it's still a bit hypothetical. But this whole model is called the Agile Fluency Model, and it was developed by James Shore and Diana Larson. And I love that it's framework agnostic, and it's making it very clear, like, what are the benefits that you're after? What are the things to be looking for to know, like from a capabilities perspective, is the team on track to meet those or, you know, create those benefits? And then certainly like what are the investments, or if you read more about this model, like what are the particular practice areas that could be helpful to coach or teach to a team so that they get there.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that I'm a big Diana Larson fan. I mean, I've had several interactions with her, but this is really, you know, going through this model is not just a conceptual conversation, it's also a game, right? You could actually play this game with executives, with different members of the team, and start to illustrate what that really looks like. And it's really fun, you know, trying to put all this together and read the cards. It's like, you know, cool stuff. So I just wanted to point that out, that there's that opportunity. What have you seen in terms of working with different organizations using the Agile Fluency Model? You know, how has it, you know, been received by people playing the game? Because you know how people are in corporate America. You don't play.
It's actually really funny. Like I had played it with a group of managers, and they did extremely well. I think they actually got the highest score that I've seen yet. And what I loved was in the debrief, you know, so, you know, each of them have their own development teams. Their development teams have been struggling, you know, learning these new practices. But now I recognize, like, wow, from a management perspective, like they understand the practices. They know like which ones might you introduce at which time, and like how would that help the team sustain in their delivery and like really, you know, create a better product. In the debrief, they recognize that like the starting point of the game, you're starting with nothing. Their teams, on the other hand, have inherited, you know, technical debts, you know, all this legacy code that's been built up over the years. And they're working on projects that have some, you know, baked in expectations on the timelines, you know, from their business, and, you know, some of the other like production support, operational things that happen. So it was like the costs of the reality the same as what they experienced in the game. And I realized, like, man, like imagine if this game, you know, was taken to our executives. Imagine if our like business stakeholders play it. It'll give us like a different way of connecting with them, and have, you know, all of us understand like this learning path takes investment. You know, people are having to dedicate some time to learn how to write automated tests, and, you know, learn how to, do continuous integration and continuous deployments, and get that, process, that pipeline in place. And then, how do we really use that to maximum effect? And so I think for them, they got a lot more empathy for their team. That, it's like they knew it, but it hadn't really been like brought to the foreground. So it helped them connect with their teams a bit better, like in that moment, and recognize like that their stakeholders, like their management and their business could use more conversation around like what was happening with the transformation.
Yeah, I actually watched while this was happening. I was watching Allison facilitate. And it's really funny watching people like walk by and like, are y'all playing a game here at work?
Yes. Yeah, it's a tabletop game. So you got like your board, you got all these like little tokens, and people are having conversations like, what if we do this? What if we do that? And at first they're figuring out like, how do we win? And you occasionally have to like kind of bring it back to like, read the card and like, what's that card about? Like, what's this practice here? And like, how might it benefit us? And the way it gets simulated in the game, I just think is really, really fantastic.
So basically, it's like you're kind of shrinking everything. This is what you actually do at work, but this like shrinking it down one couple of hours, so they can kind of like see the big picture of what we need to do. Actually reminds me, I need to set this up again with some of our people.
More games coming soon.
Me too is the trade-offs, right, in the conversation. Should I do TDD now, or should I do test-driven development? Is what TDD is, or should I do something else, right? So that beauty of allowing the management to really realize that, maybe I need to do this first before I do that, because even though everyone is saying this is the brand new hot thing that I need to do for my organization, we may need to we're here and we need to work on this skill across the organization and this learning for growth. So that's a really cool thing about the game.
And I see people like they try to push like building the pipeline towards the end. They start or something like some of the stuff that should have been like we should have been investing in the very beginning. Maybe you would have to like work on it, but like they push it and now they realize they should have moved it in the front.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the other cool ways that we used it, so we had a brand new team that was coming together. Product owner had just been hired in to help with this, and having them play the game. So, some of them had heard about TDD or like continuous integration and had a sense of what it might be. Others were brand new to it, but now they're playing the game. So they're like seeing these cards that explain the practices. They're having conversations about what those things mean, and then making decisions as a group about like, when should we do this? When do we invest in it? Like, do we do this round, or do we wait till like another round? That we were able to then have a conversation afterwards about, like, well, how did the game go? And, how did your team do at the end? But now let's talk about your actual like learning path. Like, you're about to start on your product, like, what are some of the practices you might want to be investing in and learning right away? And, we're going to have a coach that's going to be, working with you. And, what are some of the things that we might intentionally like try to do a little bit later? And, let's keep in mind that, the team, we're really giving them more of that understanding of like what's about to happen, when they engage with a coach, what are the things that they're going to be learning, but definitely more say in like the priorities of it. So rather than like the normal, hey, we're adopting this framework and we just jump in and try and do all of it at once, and that can be really overwhelming from a learning standpoint. Now you've seen all the pieces, you understand all the components that could come up, and like which ones do you naturally want to start with? We want to follow that team's energy. Yeah, you're excited about it. Like, I want to follow the excitement and provide that for you.
Again, this game provides an opportunity to, if I play this with my business stakeholders, to be able to explain, we talk about we need to do TDD, we need to do automated test, but explain to them why we need to do it at this time in the beginning, because they care about the customer experience. So like lower defects, you'll get the customer complaints will go down. It'll be a better product for the customer. So being able to talk about those things, helps out. Yeah.
Excellent.
Cool.
Excellent.
So yeah, that's a lot that we've actually just covered. Like how do you get started? Recognize the benefits that you're after, like what business problems are you trying to solve? Keep that why out in front as you communicate. Instead of having it be all about, a particular framework and emphasizing like only the practices or, becoming this like governance compliance kind of thing. Let's focus on the goal and keep our eyes towards that to make sure that we really accomplish or get the benefits that we were after. And then inviting people in so that they have more ownership, that they're participating, that they're helping to really shape the transformation itself. Checking for progress. How do we recognize where we are? How do we see like what's coming up ahead? And then that continuous improvement. So we're always looking to how do we build on what's working? How do we use more of our strengths? And keep going and see what other great things are out there. While in the back of our heads, we as coaches or we as folks that are going to be supporting the teams, keep in mind like that learning path. And see are they getting the benefits that we're expecting, and how might we support them? How might we introduce some of those other techniques or other ways of working that they can really go to that next zone, next set of benefits that they could get.
And I think that checking progress is so important because how we know when they're ready for the next phase or step. So
yeah. And I find that when you're talking about a transformation, one, the name already is kind of weird because it implies that there's like an end state when really it's more like a journey. Like you're kicking something off, you're probably looking for like an initial like big boost from where you are. And I think of that as the transformation, but then that continuous improvement kind of kicks in. But recognizing like, where are you and like, how much progress have you made? Because I think it's so easy to focus on like the next set of problems and forget like where you came from and all the accomplishments that you've gotten so far.
And I thought, as individuals or as a company, I think we never want to reach our peak. Like we can want to continue to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important for us to recognize that we have grown, but we have still a lot more to grow.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to ask the question, what might we, or what if we, or what if I, or what might I, as another way of asking those type of questions.
Yep.
Right, for growth.
Definitely. So yeah, that's the talk. And anyone, especially folks watching this later recorded, I apologize, but you're gonna see that I butcher our poor guest's name a number of times. But if you have any questions or want to get in touch with us, we're both available on email, Twitter, or you can find my blog and read and contact me some more.
Yeah, this is good. And while we're here, we could have a conversation about what we've experienced and pipe in. I mean, if you guys have questions about agility, I mean, you have experienced coaches on the other line. I mean, I'm an experienced coach in the room, but I want Noreen and Allison to really drive some of these topics. I really want your questions. I mean, I live in Tucson, so you could always ping me, but we're not going to get Noreen or Allison very often. We could, I hope.
Good, yeah. Like someone here has flight benefits, so that's.
And so, any questions that you may have based on the experience, or even not even just the presentation, but just in general? Hey, what is this Agile thing? Or I'm trying it at work and I don't really know, or maybe it's just a shout out of how great you're doing with it at work. So feel free to pipe in.
Or you just want to do the power source dance?
Yeah.
So I know one of you had like minimum experience to Agile, you're new to Agile. What about the other person in the room?
And we're trying to move to a more agile environment. Some progress is better than no progress, but we have found a lot of roadblocks with a lot of things. So I have some experience, but just getting to learn a little bit more.
So tell us your name. I know your name, but Okay. Adrienne.
Okay. Yeah, it was a little hard to hear, but it sounds like you're also early on in Agile experience.
Yeah. Are you doing Scrum?
Come closer. You can come closer too. They'll pick you up.
I thought somebody was saying.
Well, she's sitting here, so you can come closer. Next time I bring my wide lens camera and stuff like that, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I came a little bit late. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So what was your question?
Well, I was just asking what form of Agile are you doing, but I can give you a little bit like some of my experience from Agile is that in the beginning, we just said we were doing Agile. We didn't even know if we were doing it correctly because we were just doing those ceremonies. So I think the thing that we talked about is like knowing why you do it is very important. And if you start doing that earlier, it'll make you more effective at Agile.
Yeah. Well, because you've had a really interesting journey because you started like with like a smaller set of teams and like really being the Scrum Master, and even like your group like expanded. You added more teams over time, and then of course, like I said, this like Agile 2.0, we're doing more DevOps and all. We actually changed up teams, so your group got like blended in with some of the other teams so that we could add features across multiple channels and. Getting to see like the dynamics of, people change and, technology change all at once. You've had like so much exposure to what Agile can be.
Yeah. So I feel like I had an idea before, but now we're trying to get little pieces of different frameworks and trying to make it work. And it's just pivoting all the time, trying to figure out what works and what makes us most effective. So yeah, we don't have an ingredient right now.
Well, tell me, what's the biggest challenge that you've encountered, right? Because the transformation journey, as I tend to refer to it as, it has many challenges along the way in terms of people, what I would say, those who turn back. Right? We got a lot of progress and they turn back and go back to the old ways. What has been the biggest challenge that you've encountered so far?
I think it's like my distributed teams, like they're distributed with different, I don't even know if we call it a team, but there are some of our people are mixed in with other people. So we've also kind of gotten lazy about a lot of our Agile practices, like just some of the collaboration, like not even having a proper stand-up anymore. Like, so we're trying to actually reel that back in and starting to get some of that discipline back. So we're actually going backwards a little bit because we're not mature enough to move forward. So that's what we're having to do, like reel back and go back and do some basic Agile stuff again.
Yeah, I think actually, so I'll go back to like the Agile fluency model. So when you think about this learning path, like focus on value had been well established as of like years ago. And then, people were starting to do practices from like that deliver value, right? Some of those technical like TDD and some people might have been pair programming, others not so much, but you had some automated testing starting to happen that you could, still have some predictability, just not the frequent releases, but not super lengthy releases either. When the direction became like we're going to change up the team structures to try and deliver like the same features across multiple channels, it was a big disruption initially. And so it basically reset everyone. So they had to, go back to like, that first, let's focus on value as we're also trying to, really get the deliver value. And in some cases also optimize value. So the learning path like became massive all over again. And I think that's part of what you've been enduring like the last 2 years or so.
It's like having too many changes, like you could kind of compare it to work in progress. We needed to probably do a couple of things, change it, and then when we got better at that, added more things to change.
Yeah, I think in this case there was also there was like some excitement, I think, from like management of like, we want to set like this big goal and like, we're going to say like, it's a big disruptive change. Unfortunately, when people get moved into like these different groups and like different teams with folks that you don't really know all that well, when you're just saying it's all going to be brand new and it's unlike anything you've ever seen before, it resets them and they really had no like sense of grounding. Whereas, it's always easy to kind of like look back and go, what if we had done this other thing? But I'm like, wow, looking back, I wonder if we had actually said, yes, you have new people that you're going to be working with, and we're going to start just like how your teams were functioning before. So we're going to still have, sprints, and we're still going to do our retrospectives, and we're still going to have, these kinds of conversations. If that would have given them, more confidence, like from the beginning, and allowed them to gel a little bit, moving into, again, some of those like deeper technical practices on the business side, if that would have like helped us in that way. Yep.
But I want to say that fundamentally, we could go back to Tuckman's basic model of,
right?
Forming, right? Storming, norming, performing. Every time you shift teams, someone leaves, someone comes in, that's the dynamics. And even that, going back to that basic tenet, right? That happens no matter what.
Right.
Just acknowledging that also helps management to go, oh yeah, because we have new teams and we have this new practice, guess what? There's new learnings, there's the human factor. So we have to consider that as part of our journey and our transformation journey as well.
Yeah. And I think recognizing, like, when are you about to put the team like through that again, right? Like we know storming is going to happen because we've changed something, people have moved around, and, back to how are you giving them like communities of practice, that they can have a sense of belonging and like have a forum to speak there? Or is it, some kind of like organizational retrospectives, or, some place where they can like, connect back to like, here's what's going on and here's how I would like it to be done better, and be a part of the help us do it better.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the whole thing about the very beginning, like having people gel, is just so important. Have them have a sense of belonging, build that trust that with each other. Once that trust is there, it's easier to do with other stuff.
Yeah.
You guys have any other questions? Any other thoughts? And it's okay if we don't. Creating the space for us to have more discussions if we need to.
Yeah.
But if there's nothing else, let's just say, I want to say thank you. Thank you for giving up your Saturday mornings.
Yeah, we would have been at the gym.
Yeah, totally.
Kind of workout, right? So I'd just like to say, just thank you for showing up and being a part of this community as we're trying to bring agility into Tucson as a practice. People are learning here, and there's a few companies who are actually practicing Agile, but in terms of building out a community, that's the charter that I have. Well, personally, I took that on because I moved here and I like, there's no Agile community and I'm dying. So
I love that you did that. I've been involved in like the Dallas Agile community for probably close to 10 years. And I mean, it's grown tremendously over that time. But, each one of our groups, like, they started small, and they started because someone cared enough to say, like, I want to learn, and who wants to learn alongside me? And, the work into, like, how do you find speakers, and how do you find topics, and, how do you make this happen month after month after month?
Yeah.
It starts small, and it starts, with things like this. People just coming together because they're interested in hearing a bit more. And at some point, it'll just kind of like magically happen where the community grows and the like word gets out. So, you're going to tell your friends, you're going to tell your coworkers, they're going to find out about it online as more companies are getting further in their Agile journeys. And you're already creating a place for people to find you and connect with you. And I think it's awesome.
I'm so grateful to have Allison as a friend. Yeah, we're so grateful for that. So Noreen, thank you for being a part of this as well. We have never met. I don't believe we've ever met in person.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, we will. And so I'm grateful for you to come and share your experience and stories. And Allison, always. And let's look forward to next month. We're trying to see if we can find some CTOs and CIOs who want to talk about, the role of agility in digital transformation strategy, right? On that level of really thinking about how do we really use agility to help move things along. The fluency model is one context, but think about it of how you start transforming the organization to live in a VUCA world. How do we do that? And so I'm looking to see if we could find some participants for that. So if you know of anyone, we'll be happy to have them as part of the forum. And with that, I would like to say thank you so much. I want to just say thank you to our sponsors again, Agile Alliance, Scrum Alliance, NullShare, and we look forward to doing this every month for as long as we can. And, Allison, keep coming back.
Oh yeah, I love this. I love that I can dial in from my own home.
Hey, so whose home are you at today? Noreen's or yours?
This is mine. Yeah, this is Noreen knew, I moved into this house. We built it, my husband and I, and moved in February. And so I've been spending all kinds of money decorating. So she got to tour the place and see all the fancy new stuff I got.
Very fancy.
I love the walls. It's really, really awesome. Just want to let you know that.
Yes, wallpaper is back.
Really cool.
Bring bangs back.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Well, thank you graciously. Enjoy your Saturday, and we will see you again soon.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Let's see. Hello, this is Dr. Dave Cornelius again. Thank you for listening. We hope you were able to add to your awesomeness journey with this learning experience to obtain new knowledge. We are grateful to those who support us. We would like to thank our sponsor, NullShare, for the continued support for this podcast. Visit www.nullshare.org to achieve your awesomeness through Agile coaching and training, digital transformation strategy, Agile organization development, lean business startup, and diversity, equity, and inclusion coaching. Nullshare.org also provides online workshops for PDUs and SEUs to help you maintain your existing professional development certification and achieve new ones. We support lean thinking and Agile life skills education through the 5 Saturdays Agile Education Program. Visit www.5saturdays.org to donate your time, money, and knowledge. That's www.5saturdays.org. Check out Dr. Dave's latest book, Prayers to My Abba Father God, on Amazon.com. A focus on prayer to enable spiritual growth. You will also find his books, Elastic Minds, What Are You Thinking? And Transforming Your Leadership Character, The Lean Thinking and Agility Way, on Amazon.com. Look for the NullShare with Dr. Dave podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. The NullShare with Dr. Dave podcast is streamed on grokshare.com. If you have any questions for Dr. Dave, reach out on Twitter at Dr. Cornelius Info or at NullShare. Copyright 2019 NullShare. Until next time, find your awesomeness.
Psychedelic feelings, I can't please myself. Changes in my visions running wild in my head. Feeding on my madness, releasing myself. Can I get away?